Hey guys, Katie here, and in today's layout, I am taking a couple of cards, Christmas cards be it, and making a card-inspired layout as part of the CDT monthly collab here on YouTube.
So the first thing I want to do is I wanted to pick some of my favorite cards over the last couple of years. Um, this might actually be one from each. I don't know, but I always keep a sample, and then my really good customers and family get the cards that I make because we make two or three. But I wanted to pick some, and I didn't want to go by memory. I wanted to touch, I wanted to feel, I wanted to have the photo in mind that I wanted to use. And so here are the ones that I've picked. Now, I love this one because of the embossing. You can see that embossing on the side. And then I love the interactive element to it. Of course, that's a little bit harder to do on a scrapbook layout, but I love the dry embossing. I loved this bar right here. And then of course it capped off with the colored cardstock. And then of course the little grouping, but you can do that with any card basically. Here is another one that I really loved. And when you open it, I love just the different layers and the dimension. And then these two are pretty much the same. And then of course we have this one, and I just took a random stamp set and then just kind of made a fun little collage of letters. Now of course Christmas is very recognizable, so you can tell that that says Christmas. And then I also loved this one. Again, I love it. I'm just not sure it's going to work on a scrapbook layout. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pick a couple of cards and take, one or two elements from each thing and incorporate that on my layout. So I'm going to do some thinking. I'm going to grab a photo and the products that I'm going to use, and then we can get started. So I've decided to use celebratory sips and document or scrapbook this single photo of me and my brother with my mother on her birthday. And it's just this little local wine bar that my mom likes to go to. So of course celebratory sips is perfect for that. I brought in this embossing folder because one of those cards I think I'm going to do the embossing, just either the white, probably the white, just kind of tone on tone, no ink distress, just that embossing, and kind of let it show through on that white cardstock. And then I've also pulled several stamp sets that I'll bring in, either for the title or just little words or little embellishments. Okay, I am wanting to do kind of some shimmer paints over here to the right where my title is going to be. So I've pulled out the Creamies red necking. I'm hoping it's not red, but we'll see. That paper kind of has some red in it. And then I've pulled out the pink champagne Creamies. And I am just going to open these two and then get a paintbrush and some water. I've used these 2 or 3 other times, and I love that it's kind of got that subtle look to it, and they're not that messy at all. I'm going to start by just spraying some water in here to activate it. I'm going to start with the pink champagne just because it's the lighter color. And then I have a painter here, so I'm just going to be squeezing some more water.
Okay, while I kind of mess with that, get that ready to put onto my project, I wanted to remind you that we are open for 31 days of Christmas cards, but registration closes October 1st. So you're going to want to go ahead and click that register now button in the description below and get registered, where you will have 31 days of different cards featuring techniques that you can use with your own stash or use the products that we used.
Kind of like the splatter. I know some of y'all have left comments that, you know, why do you do splatter on every single thing? And it's just one of those things that I love. Let's get one more thing down there. And then I don't mind mixing this color. This one is going to be more of a hit and miss. I don't want it very bold at all. So we're just going to leave those right there for right now. And then I'm going to grab some paper towel and we're going to kind of dry some of this up. Okay, while that is drying, I have this stamp set, Happy Birthday, and I'm going to be using the birthday. And I want to ink that up in Secret C, I think. And I'm going to just fussy cut that out. So I'm going to ink that up and stamp that onto a scratch piece of white cardstock. And this scratch looks perfect. I'm just going to stamp that down. I don't need the happy, the title that I'm thinking of. Do not need that. And then I also have Let's Celebrate. And that is from this Simply Said card stamp set. So even though you might have some some sentiments for some cards, don't be afraid to use them on your scrapbook layout. I love doing that. It's one of my favorite things to do. I have a whole bunch of just scratch piece of white strips. Usually if I'm gonna, you know, mat something like on my layouts and I'm using a white mat, or if I gut something out, I have little strips. So I love to use those either for my ribbon or stuff like this. So we've got that. And then I'm also going to be doing some fussy cutting of this paper. So let me pull out my photo again. So I want to stay away from this one because I've already got so much of that here and then kind of in my shirt. And then even though our wine isn't really that color, it kind of lends itself to that. I kind of want to stay away from the yellows as well. So see this little napkin right here? So I'm thinking that's going to be a good reason to come in with that. And then I may also do this drink simply because, I mean, who doesn't want a drink with an umbrella on their birthday, right? She loves green too. So I might actually try to do this green one right here. I love this paper because it's just so easy to fussy cut. You know, a lot of our papers have the coordinating dies, but sometimes by the time you pull out the die, by the time you pull out your die cut machine, it's just easier just to fussy cut them out. And then I like to just leave a thin white border around all my images. And that way it kind of makes it look like a sticker. It's also a little more forgiving when you have rounded corners, kind of like this umbrella right here. If you were to cut directly on that, then sometimes if you mess up, it's a whole lot easier to tell that you've messed up. And then I'll decide here in a second if I'm going to actually try to cut that out or not. And then let's go ahead with this one. Now, like I tell y'all all the time is, don't be afraid or don't think that, you know, because we were drinking wine, that I have to have a wine glass with the exact same color, all of that stuff. You want to think more in terms of themes. And so I'm just going to put these glasses because they're festive, they're fun. You know, they're something that, had we not been drinking wine, or had my husband been there, these drinks might have been on the menu. There's also these cute little flowers, but I don't think I'm going to do anything with those right now. So I'm going to do that, and then, I don't know, depending on how that dries back, I don't know. I'm going to save this off to the side just in case I need to cut another one once I get my title and everything done. So I have already cut the word wine, but now I'm going to cut bar with the party alphabet. And I'm just cutting it from this DSP. And I think that even though it's busy, because it's going to go on that white cardstock base, and then I'm only going to have touches of the other part of this DSP or pattern paper, I think it's going to look really good. It's going to kind of bring in that extra something. Just going to run that through. And y'all know me, if you are used to following me around here, that I usually try to do my die cutting in a way that I can save this part. So I can save bar for something else. I can save wine for something else, especially with this paper collection. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to emboss this. Now this comes from the Glass and Gardens, and I'm going to be using the glass one. And I'm just going to do white cardstock for this. I am going to bring out my larger die cut and embossing machine. Let's move that away. And depending on your die cut machine, you'll want to do the sandwich that works for you. So I've got a 1 and 2 3s. Now you can see that if you're not familiar with this embossing folder, it kind of fades off to the right. Because I'm not going to be using all of this, I'm going to go ahead and emboss the entire, I think I cut this to 3 1/4. I'm going to emboss the whole thing because I can cut it, and then kind of like I did with the letters, I can use that opposite side. So I'm just going to run it back through. And then I am actually going to turn this around, but I'm going to end up cutting this because there's a definite pattern. It's going to be opposite, if you can see what I'm talking about. But we're going to cut it, and I'm going to kind of hide the seam with an embellishment. I don't know about you, but I just love white cardstock that is embossed. So we've got that, and I think for the most part, I'm going to be done with all the machines, so I can go ahead and put this up. Okay, I did end up, everything's dry, everything's cut, but I did end up cutting this piece because it is so warped. And so one thing I like to do is, I don't like a lot of warped things in my album. So I just like to cut that off, and then I have applied a pretty hefty amount of adhesive on the back of here, and then I am just going to glue it down to this piece. Now you're still going to have some warping, but not near as much. And then I'm just going to sit there and rub that around. Now you'll notice that my cardstock base is not the same color. It's okay. Don't worry about that because it's going to be hidden. Now, because this kind of creased right here, I've got to trim just a little bit off right here. Okay, and then I'm going to pick that up and I'm going to show you now that it's dry. Can you just see how that shimmers? And it's just so creamy. I love it. I'm hoping it's going to look good behind my title. So I've already cut this apart. Remember, I told you I was going to do that. And I'm just going to trim, since the majority of this is not going to be shown. I'm just going to trim 1.5 inches. And then that way I can use this on something else. So I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to save this, and I can use that either on another layout or a card. And then, of course, we're going to have a seam, but we will end up hiding that. So you've got those 2 embossed pieces. And then also I'm going to be using this to kind of mat behind here, but there's no reason why I should waste all of this. So I am just going to trim right past that line. So it looks to be about 1/4 inch. And I'm just going to do another one because I'm going to have one on each side. And then we'll keep this to the side because I may use this as a second mat or something to my photo. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and get these adhered down. And I don't know if, yeah, so there's definitely a wider part. So I'm going to do the wider part on the inside. So I'm going to have that glued down. And then this one. You may not even be able to tell there's a seam. Yeah, you can. I was fixing to say, you may not even be able to tell because, you know, there are certain lines in here. Notice that's hanging off a little bit. Okay, so we've got that, and then now I want to lay this down. So let's take a look at how much space the word wine takes. I don't want it to feel cramped, but I don't want a whole lot of space. So yeah, I think that, and then by the time I add these little slivers, that'll be good. And then we can put these down. Now on this, I think I'm going to use tear tape because it's got to adhere to this embossed side, and it's just kind of skinny. So I'm just rubbing my fingers across that, just making sure that it's really secure. And then I like to take your pick tool, just kind of lift up on that backing. Now this is a long piece, so I think what I'm going to do is adhere one end down and then kind of walk this back as I'm adhering the rest of it down. So we're going to repeat that with this side. I love the take your pick tool. It has different heads on it. I will tell you that this is like a smaller piercer or whatever, and I prefer it over the one that comes with the little silly putty end. So either way you do it, you can either walk it back or like this one, I just took it all off. Okay, so to house my little cluster, I'm going to be using the 2 3/8 circle punch and just punch out of this same pattern paper. And then I also want just a white cardstock piece out of the 2-inch, or using the 2-inch, and some just white cardstock. That's going to allow me to kind of build this little scene. So I decided to go with that same piece, just turn it the opposite direction and have it hanging off of here. I want my photo up enough that when I come in with this little piece, it's not hiding her hands. One of my favorite things about scrapbooking is hands. I can see photos of my dad's hands, my grandmother's hands, anything, and it just brings back so many memories. And so I'm trying to keep her hands in there. So I am going to be adding some dimensionals to these letters just to kind of pop it up again, kind of create or leave that movement of this little feature right here on the base of the layout under the letters. So I'm going to start with the E, and I think I'm going to do it right there. The reason I'm starting with the E is I have a different idea for the I and wine. So I want to make sure that it doesn't cramp this E over here. So I want the E pretty close to the edge, but not so close to the edge that it looks like I ran out of room. And then we've got the N. And then I'm going to walk myself back and spell out my title. So we've got that. Now for the I think I'm going to do this. And I think I do want to punch this out. So all you have to do is, when you have some insides like that, take a hole punch and just create you a hole, and then just big enough to where your scissors can fit in. And then that's going to allow you to then cut on this inside. See, we've got that, and I'm going to add some foam. So I decided to move the photo down a little bit. I don't want it centered, but I want it just barely above the word wine, because now that I have this glass right here, I want them to kind of be diagonal from each other. So we're going to have that. Now we have that little seam there, I have some ideas, but one thing I did do was I tucked the bottom portion over the top, and I think the line is less noticeable. So we're just going to adhere this down. I think I'm going to just use tape adhesive for this because I want my little drinks and stuff to be on 3D foam. And what I am trying to do is I'm trying to line the lines from this up with that. And then we've got some different options. Now I went ahead and I cut this picture because there's so many red spots in here. I'm thinking that the picture is going to be here. Went ahead and cut this bottle. Even though the ratio over here is not accurate, I still like it. And then I kind of like this purple glass. So we're kind of doing that. I don't know yet if I want it to hang off or what I want to do there. But we can come back in with this word, which is birthday. And I am going to just be adhering that directly to the layout. I think we have enough 3D foam over here. And then also I can kind of tuck it in under. Maybe not. Maybe just like that. Birthday. I am going to add at the over here, just because birthday wine bar didn't really make sense. So I just have an alphabet from my stash. You know, guys, this is usually where I mess up royally. The main thing is just to make sure there's no ink on my block. We'll finish it off. I don't think it's that big of a deal that my "the" is crooked. Okay, I think I'm going to put this right here. Maybe a little further down. I think it just adds a nice little diagonal spot with these smaller letters. And then I have these glued down. And this little crease is getting on my nerves. So I am going to take this. It's a die, but it doesn't cut out the edges. And I am going to cut some of these in my die cut machine. This is going to be really easy because there's already that little fold. So I am just going to tear that up. So see, I just love that little piece peeking out. And then of course now it kind of, you know, seems like there's a reason why there's a crease right there. I'm also going to add some ice cubes to this right here. And I'm going to do it tone on tone. I'm not really sure what color that is, but we are going to try. We're going to take a look at Flamingo, which is a close to my heart color. I think I'll do second generation. Maybe not. Let's do first generation. For my embellishments, I was trying to decide between the Regal foiled and the loose frosted. And I think I'm going to go with the loose frosted. It just looks so real. I prefer using glue dots to adhere my embellishments. So right now, I definitely know that I want some of the pink ones in the drink. So I'm just going to pick up some of these and just put them directly onto my glue dot. And then I want some of the blue ones. I'm pretty sure that this little packet was created before Secret C came out, so I don't think it's Secret C, but it's pretty close. And then, of course, I do want some of the yellow ones too. The good thing about this is that all of these colors are in here. Okay, so I am done. Let's take a look and see. So I've got these up here, and then of course the ones in the glass. I've got some down there, some right here, and then 3 right around these parts. Now I will probably add strip journaling down here and maybe up here. And then I will add the date. I'm thinking right here. Not sure yet. But there is that. Now, can you guess which 2 cards I used for inspiration? I'm going to show you right quick. Of course, I used this one. We've got that long single, and then, of course, the kind of blocked out of those pieces by the cardstock, and then the focal piece. Of course, I did bring a circle in there. That's kind of loose right there. And then, of course, the sentiment coming from the right. And then I drew inspiration from this one. I love these letters, even though they're not kind of skewed like this, even though they're not jumbled. I love that they kind of are in their own right because of the pattern paper that I used. So those are the 2 cards, of course, on our layout. And don't forget that we are open right now, but only for a few more days, for the 31 Days of Christmas Cards 2025, where you will get 31 days of cards featuring techniques and products. If you would like to purchase the products, you're more than welcome to do so. Otherwise, they are designed for you to use products that you have on hand, especially your paper and your stamps and such. And then even though it's only 31 days, or it is 31 days, we show multiple cards for each day. So you are literally getting hundreds of card ideas in the month of October. Remember that I will leave a link down below where you can register. You will receive an email with a link to the private Facebook group where you will request to join, and we will get you in as soon as possible. Don't forget to click on the description down below if you want to shop any of the products that I used. And of course, there is a playlist for the CDT. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching. I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your weekend.